Well, hello all, and welcome to the MegaCast by Actual Tech Media. Our topic today is understanding your cloud-native data protection and disaster recovery options. My name is Jess Steinbach, and I'm so excited to be here with you today for this important discussion because cloud-native applications are exciting. They really are. And hey, I know that I don't have to convince this crew of that. We all know that containers, Kubernetes, and DevOps are changing what is possible for organizations every day, allowing for new growth, goals, and scalability. And the really cool thing about it is there's no end in sight. Right now, as we sit here chatting today, new applications are spinning up, and that results in new and increasingly critical data that needs to be stored, utilized, and definitely protected. And that's what we're here to talk about today. How can you ensure that all of this carefully generated data is safe and recoverable in your cloud-native applications? There's a lot to this topic, so luckily today we're going to be joined by some top innovators from Rubrik, Haiku, Cast by Veeam, and Zerto. These awesome experts are here to talk to us about all the current trends, the tools, the technologies that you need to know, whether you are all in on cloud native or maybe you're just starting to explore. There's something for you in this MegaCast. Now, if you haven't joined us for a MegaCast in the past, a very special welcome to all the first-timers out there. Actual Tech Media created the MegaCast and the EcoCast series to help educate technology professionals like yourself on the latest innovations and trends in enterprise technology. These webinars are designed to get you that hot insight and up-to-date information efficiently from the comfort of your home or office. So MegaCast and EcoCast allow you to pose and answer questions, to connect with other experts in your field, and to help you solve your most pressing technology challenges. So before we get into our exciting sessions here today, I want to go through just a few housekeeping things that are going to help you get the most out of the MegaCast. Now, of course, if your eyes went right to that little prize icon over there, I'm going to come back to those in just a moment. We do have some awesome prizes for you today. But first, I want to draw your attention to the questions box in your webinar control panel. So if you haven't already said hi, we love seeing all you awesome folks connecting from around the world. We've gotten some great kudos on the dance music this morning. I have to say I have a little dance party at my desk every session, so I'm right there with you. Just a nice way to kick off a MegaCast. Give a wave and say hello to your friends out there in the actual tech community. The questions console is also a great place to let us know about any technical issues, knock on wood, that might come up today. Keep in mind, and I do want to remind you of this, a browser refresh is going to clear out any of the usual sort of tech gremlins, but if they're really clinging on or being persistent today, shoot us a message in that questions console. The actual tech media team will be there to help. Now, most importantly, we want this to be an informative webinar for you, and that means we want your technical questions. So throughout today's MegaCast, we hope you'll get engaged and make sure to ask all the questions you have about cloud-native applications, data protection, and disaster recovery. I know there's going to be a lot, so keep those coming in. Now, we also have a few sessions to get through today. We're going to have to move pretty quickly, so we're going to try to have as much Q&A as we can at the end of each presentation. If we don't get to your question during the live webinar today, don't worry. The awesome humans from Rubrik, Haiku, Cast by Veeam, and Zerto are going to be following up with you afterwards. Now, the next little icon on your screen there is that social button. Obviously, we all know that good things should be shared. You're going to have a lot of awesome aha and brain-tickling moments today, so when you hear something exciting, be sure to tell your friends. You can use that Twitter button that's right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's MegaCast is automatically going to be added to your post. Now, while you're clicking around your audience console, so you were in that questions tab earlier, right next to it is a handouts tab. And if you click into that, you're going to find some fantastic resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We've got an info pack collection of data sheets, demos, ebooks, and more. So click around in the handout section, explore a little bit, download, and make sure you get some of those awesome resources for later. Now, for those of you that I haven't officially met yet, my name is Jess Steinbach. I will be one of your moderators for the webinar today. I am also going to be joined by both my fellow moderators. The dynamic duo, David Davis and Scott Becker, will be here to chat with us in just a moment. But before we get into our keynote chat, I said I would come back to the prizes, and I meant it. So in today's MegaCast, you have a chance to win one of 10 Nintendo Switch consoles, one of 10 Nintendo Switch consoles. And that is not even including the $500 Amazon gift card that we're going to give away every 30 minutes. At the end of each session, there's going to be a $500 Amazon gift card and some Nintendo Switch consoles. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live webinar to qualify for the prizes. All winners must meet the actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you're saying to yourself, sounds great, but what are those terms and conditions, fair enough. Head on over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the full T's and C's for you there. Now, I mentioned earlier that we have a questions box, and that's where we want to hear all your questions coming in. We're big fans of those questions, and in fact, we're such big fans that we actually have an additional prize for you. So if you ask the best question in a session, you can be eligible to win a $50 Amazon gift card. Now, we're going to pick the best question at the end of the webinar, so even if we don't read your question out live during a Q&A session, there is still a chance that you'll win this question. So make sure you get those questions in, not just because of curiosity's sake, although, hey, that too, but also because you could be winning this $50 Amazon gift card. Now, I'm just going to put up a few of the sort of general T's and C's for the prizes here, a few quick reminders, including that all grand prize winners are required to submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. Okay, so if you are a winner today, you always have the option to donate the value of the prize to one of our selected charities. Now, thanks to generous prize winners on previous Actual Tech Media webinars, thousands of dollars have been donated to these charities. So if you're a winner today and you'd like to get involved with one of these amazing organizations, let us know because we would love to help make that happen. Now, again, we're pretty happy you're here with us at the live webinar today, and we want to keep that good feeling going, so make sure to connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and Facebook. We want to hear from you. If you're looking for some more content, you should check us out on YouTube. You can subscribe to our channel. Lots of great webinars on demand, so head over and start exploring. Not yet, though, after the webinar, not right now. You can click on that link, save that tab for later. And if you're looking for some more content, make sure to check out LinkedIn. We've got lots of resources collected for you there. And if you haven't, you really should check out the Gorilla Guide Book Club. There are access to free enterprise IT books offered by top industry experts. It allows you to stay up to date on trending enterprise technology, and not only are these books free, they will work on your Kindle or mobile device. So if you're doing some summertime reading out by the lake, this is a great way to take those resources along with you. You can download all these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, so make sure that you check them out. There's a link in the Handouts tab for you as well. Okay, well, last little bit of info here. I know that I've mentioned this before. I think you're all pretty great. We're all big fans of yours. I mean, look at all of you out there just ready to ask some insightful questions and learn cool new things. And we want to keep getting to know you. We want to keep getting to know your community. So another great way to win a prize is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. You're going to find a link to do that right in your Handouts tab, and you will be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar as well. I want to promise you all, because I know it's a little scary when you recommend a friend to something like this, we are not going to spam them. We are going to send them one invitation to a list of upcoming webinars. Now, if they don't respond to us, we'll give them one more little reminder, and that's it. And then we'll leave them alone. But hopefully we'll hook them on those first two emails, because as you know, there's some great content waiting for them here. And both you and your coworker or friend could win a $300 Amazon gift card. We hold those drawings every month, so be sure to refer those friends and coworkers, because it could quite literally be a win-win situation. All right, well, that is it. We've made it through all of our webinar prep, so let's get into our sessions. To kick us off today, we have a powerhouse team, not one, but two of my awesome fellow moderators. Both Scott Becker and David Davis are here to chat about cloud-native apps and some fun trivia about Kubernetes. This is going to be an awesome keynote, so let's dive in. Scott and David, thank you both so much for joining us on the MegaCast today. I will hand the mic on over to you both.
Hey, everybody. I'm excited about this MegaCast. I'm excited to be here to talk about understanding cloud-native data protection and disaster recovery options. And I'm delighted to be joined by my fellow Actual Tech Media moderator, David Davis. David, welcome.
Hey, Scott, it's great to be back on the MegaCast. And this is an exciting topic today, cloud-native data protection.
It is. And we're going to be hearing a lot more about that, both on cloud-native and the Kubernetes side. And I thought it might be fun to start with a little trivia about Kubernetes to start us off.
Absolutely.
So how do you feel about some trivia?
I love it.
Awesome. Okay, so the first question is a pretty common trivia question about Kubernetes. Why is Kubernetes abbreviated by K8S?
Oh, maybe it's because a lot of people have trouble spelling it. People also have trouble saying it sometimes. Kubernetes, Kubernetes. But when it comes to writing it out, people, they just want a short abbreviation. And so the number 8 in the middle stands for the letters that you have pulled out. So it's K, and then the 8 stands for all the letters before you get to the S at the end of the word. And I mean, I've seen this done before also. I don't know if you've ever been to VMware's virtualization forum, their community. It was called V12N for a long time, which stands for virtualization. The V12 is the letters in the middle, and then the N is at the end.
Oh, I like that. And it's funny because when I first saw the Kubernetes abbreviation, I hadn't seen the V12N one, and I always assumed it was like the 8 kind of sounds like the sound of Kubernetes in between.
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, so you nailed that one. Good job, David. Next one. What language does the term Kubernetes come from, and what does that term mean?
It comes from Greek, and it means helmsman.
Yeah. Exactly. You nailed it. All right.
And a lot of the other.
Yeah, go ahead.
A lot of the other packages around Kubernetes also, have been named based on Greek nautical terms, chart, and I can't think of them all right now. But if you look at all the different Kubernetes open source packages, a lot of them are nautical, Greek terms or nautical terms of some kind.
Awesome. All right. Well, this next one is a little trickier, but what's the connection of Kubernetes to Star Trek's X-Borg character 7 of 9?
When the Google engineers wrote Kubernetes, they were thinking of a name. And I know they initially called it 7 of 9, I think. And on the helmsman wheel, if you look at the logo, there's 7, handles kind of around the wheel. And they called it 7 of 9. And I think the internal code word was actually Borg too. They called it for Kubernetes at Google.
You are like, you're right. You're right there. The original contributors had worked on Google's Borg cluster manager, and they gave Kubernetes the code name Project 7 because 7 of 9 was an X-Borg character. So you're in there. Lots of points there on that one.
I think Google Legal told them they couldn't call it 7 of 9 due to trademark issues.
I like that. It sounds like a legal department move.
Yeah.
So last question, how long has Kubernetes been around?
I'm awful with dates. I can't even tell you what today is. So I don't know. This one, 8 years.
You are very close, and that's especially good given that everybody's awful with dates, like especially like the last 3 years are just a mush for everybody. So the 1.0 release was July 21st, 2015. So it's almost exactly 7 years ago.
Okay, awesome.
Yep. Well, David, that's all the trivia that I had. You did pretty good.
Thank you. So, Scott, I mean, so many companies out there, they're looking to enhance and modernize their applications. They've been using legacy applications forever. They want to do better. But I wanted to ask you a question. What are the challenges that you see that they're facing when it comes to cloud native and around Kubernetes?
Yeah, so there are a lot of issues. Obviously there are a ton of features and benefits, but a lot of the emphasis on cloud native applications is what people call shifting left, and so that refers to moving security testing efforts into the development realm, more than where it's traditionally been in the operations sort of phase of the organization. So a lot of organizations are struggling, especially at first, with deciding who's responsible for security. It takes discipline and some organizational realignment to sort of get that right. Another common security issue that people have is just with the complexity of, what for a lot of organizations is a new environment. It's easy to make configuration mistakes or to not understand the downstream implications of certain choices. Then organizations are also running into issues of scalability, where they find their Kubernetes and other cloud native environments are great for maybe dev and QA, but not so great in production. And then The last one that I kind of want to talk about is, lock-in. When you're talking about like Kubernetes, especially, there are implementations, that are on premises, and then AWS, Azure, Google, they all have their own implementations in the cloud. And if you start out in one, it can be difficult to move later if you decide there's some reason to go to another platform. So you just have to watch out for that lock-in. David, why is cloud native data protection different than traditional data protection?
Yeah, I mean, I'm old enough, and I'm going to date myself, to remember when we first talked about moving from physical servers to virtual servers. And no matter what hypervisor you chose, it was all that same list that you just went down there, Scott. It was, well, who's going to do security in the virtual infrastructure? Who's going to configure the virtual network? How are we going to protect the data in the virtual network? Who's going to manage the storage? And so it's all the same questions, just all over again, but with Kubernetes. And back then with data protection, it was the same thing, where it was like, well, how do we back up the virtual infrastructure? And at first, traditional like legacy backup vendors were like, oh, easy. You put an agent on the ESXi host and there you go, you back it up. Well, yeah, I guess you could, but that's not really ideal. And it's the same thing with Kubernetes, where it's like, oh yeah, can you back up Kubernetes? Yeah, we could put an agent on a Linux host and back it up. Yeah, well, that's not really ideal, because that doesn't, just like with virtualization, you need, and just like with, applications like Exchange or SQL or databases, you need application state. And so you need the state of the cluster. You need to understand what's going on in the Kubernetes cluster. You need to back up the master nodes and their associated databases, correctly, so that when you restore that, everything goes back exactly how it was. And it's not just kind of a mess when it comes to restoration. So in my mind, that's why you need specific backup and disaster recovery applications that understand the Kubernetes infrastructure.
Those are all great points. And David, I just wanted to ask you from your experience, virtualization has been around for, 20, 25 years. Kubernetes, we've just established, has been around for like 7. How long did it take for virtualization infrastructure, like for people to really get that sort of figured out?
Oh, I mean, it took, 10 years or more, I would guess, at least a decade before it sort of matured.
Yeah.
And you had all these associated applications to not only protect it, but, understand security and networking and storage and monitoring and performance. And I mean, Kubernetes is the same way. I'm sure it'll take kind of the same adoption curve.
Yeah. So we're sort of in that rough and tumble period right now, which is a perfect setup for today for like some of the innovative companies that are going to come on and talk about ways to, to manage Kubernetes and cloud native. And really looking forward to learning about that backup and DR stuff.
Absolutely. Let's kick it off.
Oh man, that was awesome, you guys. You are both clearly trivia master. David, we got a couple of people asking you how you got those answers right. I can assure you, Scott did not give David the questions ahead of time. That was very off the cuff. He's just that smart, folks. And thank you all. A few people were chiming in on chat. It's nice to see you guys playing along with us. Lots of great info about Kubernetes, cloud native applications, Star Trek, shifting left, and more. What's not to love in that discussion? And the even better news is we're just getting started here today. So now, before we jump into our first session, we have a poll question up for you. And some of you have seen this before, but do take a minute to fill it out for us, because it is really helpful for us as we plan some of the content and approaches. We want to know, when somebody asks you, what do you do? How do you answer? Do you answer that you work in tech? Do you answer that you work in IT? Or if it's something totally different and you wouldn't say either of those things, please do let us know in chat how you would describe your role. So would you, again, high level tech, IT, or miscellaneous and somewhere in the ether, and let us know. All right, well, thank you to everyone who filled out that poll. Looks like we've got a lot of answers, so you guys have clearly had your coffee this morning. Well done. I'm going to give you another quick test today. So here's another poll question for you. What is your time frame for adding new or updating existing technology at your organization? So what we're really looking for here is, today we're obviously talking about cloud native apps and protecting and data recovery. So if you're thinking about the solutions that we're going to hear about today, when are you thinking? What is your time frame for when you would like to implement those changes? And again, this is helpful for us as our speakers approach their conversations. You know, or are they looking at something that's a little more short? Or something with a longer time frame. Right now I'm seeing the answers come in pretty split evenly across the board, and that's kind of cool. That means all of you are at different phases. Some of you are just getting started, some of you, and so you're thinking longer term. Some of you maybe have been researching for a while. You're looking more at that short-term change. That's awesome because we are going to get something for each of you in this MegaCast today. Speaking of which, what do you say? Let's kick it off, guys. Let's get started. I am so excited to introduce you to our very first presenter in today's MegaCast. We'll be chatting with Matthew Castriata, Sales Engineer at Rubrik. Matthew, thank you so much for being here with us to kick off our MegaCast today. I know you've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to head on off the mic and I'll hand the platform over to you.
Hi, my name is Matt Castriata, and I'm the go-to-market lead for security here at Rubrik. You're about to see a demo of our sensitive data discovery capability. This capability is designed to satisfy two key use cases. The first is a reactive use case, post-attack, being able to understand what was the sensitivity of the data at rest in those locations that were impacted by a cyber event, so that you can make some determinations on if sensitive data was in scope and or if that data was exfiltrated from your network. It is critical to understand this because this is the primary objective of the adversaries, is to find and exfiltrate sensitive data, which brings me to the second use case, which is more of a proactive use case. And this is understanding where my sensitive data is it stored in the right place, and is it permissioned properly? It's critical to be able to do this broadly across your estate, not just in locations where you expect sensitive data to be. So join me on this journey of sensitive data discovery. I hope you enjoy what you see, and if you need anything from the team over at Rubrik, let us know. We're happy to help.
Hey folks, appreciate you taking the time here on a Thursday afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. Welcome. My plan is to walk you through our sensitive data discovery capability. This was launched, as Matt mentioned, a few years ago. I was on the launch team for it. Helping to build and refine and define how customers could use this capability. We really always looked at this as really two value areas, right? The first value area is we can be very broad about what we scan because we're scanning against the backup data. We don't need some of those traditional trade-offs on should I run an agent? When should I run my scans? Will it affect production performance? None of those trade-offs exist when you're executing the scans against a latent data set. And as long as that backup environment is doing proper workload management and it's not bumping into backup or recovery workloads, then there's a lot of value in the width of what we can scan within the estate. So that was always one of the first key value areas for this capability when we went to market a few years ago. And the other is it was really focused on the fact that there's no lift here, right? This is delivered as SaaS. So we just turn it on the account, you execute it against the backup objects, you tell us which policies you want to run against which backup objects, and you're off to the races. There's nothing to install here. And we'll show you essentially the data once we've completed the scan on the back end. Really to satisfy two use cases, right? And Matt, I think talked at length about one of them, and that's in ransomware investigation, right? If you have encryption that might have happened in a system, you know that the bad actors are after sensitive information that might be stored in those same locations where encryption may have occurred. And you have to be able to tell very quickly, and especially if you're a regulated organization where you have to report any breaches or any possible exfiltration of data, exposure of customer data to a regulatory body, it's really important to be able to do it timely and to be able to do it across the estate, to have the visibility across the estate. And so within the context of ransomware investigation, it's very important to have that visibility and to have it at your fingertips very quickly. The other use case, which is how we recommend our customers use it, is use it in peacetime for sensitive data hygiene, right? Understand, where is my sensitive data? Is it in the right place? And is it permissioned properly? And if you can answer those questions ahead of any sort of breach of your systems, your risk posture is going to be lowered dramatically. And you're going to be in a much better situation when it comes to sensitive data exposure, if you're doing the right things from a governance, risk, and compliance perspective. So it is really important, and something that we tell our customers: use this in peacetime. Have a process. Understand, is my sensitive data stored in the right place? And is it permissioned properly? And if you can do that across a broad swath of things that you're protecting, you're going to put yourself in a much better risk situation than you would if you were not doing that. So that's really the story behind sensitive data discovery, why we built it, and really what use cases it satisfies. Now I'm going to dive into the product and show it to you. This is the dashboard. This is where you land when you come into data discovery. Everything is centered around files. So this pane here is giving us information about which files have sensitivity associated with them. This pane is giving us information about which files have staleness associated with them, as well as sensitivity. Any file that hasn't been accessed in over a year, we mark as a stale sensitive file. If it has sensitive data in it and its last access time is greater than 12 months, we mark that as stale. And yes, that's something that could inform your information lifecycle management strategies, how you tier data in your enterprise, how you age data off in your enterprise. This should inform that process. 90% of files that haven't been accessed in over a year never get accessed again. So keeping that in mind, it may be good to start to move that data somewhere else. And then this last metric is the most important metric. These are files that have sensitivity associated with them, but that also have open access. So any of those groups within Active Directory that have a very broad ownership, right? Something like everyone, or domain users, or authenticated users. If any of those well-known groups within Active Directory have read access against a file that has sensitive data, we mark that file as having open access as well as sensitivity. The point is to drive this number here down to 0. You do not want anything with open access and sensitivity associated with it, because it doesn't matter what credentials the bad guys may have compromised. They will be able to see those files if they can get to them. This number will never be 0. And the point is not to manage my sensitive data estate so that I don't have any sensitive data. It really is to take what I do as a part of doing business and ensure it's stored properly and ensure that it's permissioned properly. And that's really what this is giving you visibility to do. Again, driving this number down to 0 is really important. And then what we're doing is we're quantifying risk. And we quantify risk based on how many files have sensitivity as well as open access. And that's really how we quantify risk across all objects that we're scanning. In this case, I'm scanning 40 objects within the environment. 7 of those have high risk because 7 of those objects contain files that are accessible by everyone. We'll also show you your risk profile on a per policy basis. And I'm going to get into policies and analyzers in a bit. We did kind of give you an introduction to those in slideware, but I'm going to show you that in the demo format. And then we show you which objects have the highest risk based on the number of files that also have open access. So we're going to dive into a drill down here. This is giving you sort of that 10,000-foot overview of the classification landscape and an understanding of your risk profile based on what you've scanned. Now we're going to dive into the objects themselves and we're going to look at the actual files and folders and see what we uncovered. This view is sorted by sensitive hits, and this may not be how you want to start tackling the problem. What you may want to do is do an additional sort to say, I want to sort by open access sensitive files. Because as I mentioned, the point is to drive those numbers down to 0. You don't want files sitting out there with sensitivity as well as open access. So we're going to dive into this object here. It's a VM. It's got 35,000 hits, but 41 of those files also have open access. So let's dive a little bit deeper. As we drill into the object, excuse me, we give you basically the file system that you can browse. You can look at the data in one of two ways. You can say, I either want to browse through the file system to understand what files and folders my sensitive data may exist in, or you can say, just give me all of the files that have sensitivity. And oh, by the way, I only want to see the ones that have hits and open access as well, right? So this is giving you sort of that very quick view of which files have sensitivity associated with them, which policies they hit on, as well as some more other information about their last access time. But the key is that we've now narrowed it down to the files themselves that also have open access. And you can do that as well here. You don't need to look at this data within the UI. You can download this same metadata to a CSV for just those files with hits and open access. And as I mentioned, that's the initial area where you should be spending your time remediating. You want to get that open access down to some sort of a narrowed access pattern. But we'll go back to browse so we can look through the browse view, and we'll browse through the file system to the C drive. We'll sort as we're going along here. It looks like the file shares folder has most of my sensitive data, which you would expect, right? Anywhere where users are storing content are going to be areas rich with sensitive information. Regardless of whether those areas are protected or not, users tend to put sensitive information anywhere where they're storing content. So we can go into this public share folder, and as we can see in the public share folder, most of my open access sensitive files, or all of my open access sensitive files, as a matter of fact, sit there. So as we go through and we drive in, we're driving into the folders that have data. And then we're also now we're at the root of the folder and you're seeing the files themselves. As we were clicking through, you may have noticed we were opening a pane here on the right that gave us the classification landscape for the folders that we were driving into. This is the root folder, USPII, and underneath these folders are files that have sensitive information in them. In aggregate, this folder has 85,000 policy hits. Policy hits are always going to be greater than unique hits, because analyzers overlap with other policies. You'll have the Social Security analyzer in almost every one of these policies here, with the exception of PCI. If I wanted to dive into the 26,000 US PII policy hits to see which data sets we hit on, I can just drill right into the US PII policy, and I can see that there are in this folder 7,300 passport numbers, 6,900 ITINs, a bunch of socials, VINs, EINs, etc. If encryption happened in this location, you can guarantee that some of this data may have been exposed. And you're going to want to report that up to your legal, up to the regulators that you may be beholden to let them know that sensitive data may have been exposed and it could very well have been customer data. It's very important to be able to have that information in a timely way, especially during wartime. So again, we just saw the classification landscape for a particular folder. We saw which policies it hit on. We're also now looking at an analyzer-centric view to see which analyzers it hit on. As you can see, we are not showing any of the sensitive information within this control plane. This is just metadata. This is metadata that's coming off the cluster, your rubric environment, where the scans are occurring. So the scans occur locally, and then the metadata gets passed up into this control plane so that you can operate on that metadata here. So we showed you the classification breakout. We showed you which files underneath that folder have sensitive information. Now we can drill down into which users have access to that data. We will resolve Active Directory SIDs, and we will resolve those SIDs against your Active Directory environment. In this case, the owner of this file is no longer existent in our Active Directory environment. So what we do is we expose the SID number. If we cannot resolve that SID for whatever reason, because the Active Directory environment that the rubric cluster has visibility into doesn't have that SID associated with it, we will give you the SID number and you can go and resolve that manually. And there are a number of groups that have access to the data on this folder. Everyone has list folder contents, which is fairly innocuous. But underneath that, we know that some of these files themselves have open access. And now we've drilled down into the file itself. In this case, it's a JSON file. This is to demonstrate to you that we're not just looking at PDFs and Office documents, that although that is within scope, we're also looking at very common data integration formats like XML and JSON, because a lot of applications pass sensitive data between themselves and don't do a good job of cleaning up the integration formats in which they pass data. So you will find sensitive data in these textual locations as well. Same drill down here at the file level. We can drill down into the policy. We can see exactly which hits reside in that file. We can drill into the user and we can look at the owner and the permissions of that file. But another thing that we can unlock here is this preview function. And what this preview function does is it will redirect you to the rubric environment where you can actually see the sensitive data that we found in that file. But it requires you to authenticate on the rubric cluster itself in order to be able to see it, because that's where your backup data lives, and that's where your backup data will always live. Of course, you could go back to the source to look at that information as well. Obviously there's nothing stopping you from going and doing that as long as you have the access to do it. So that's really the file-based drill down. There are some other neat features here that I think is worth showing. And one of those is the ability to go back in time, either back in time within the day, because we did multiple snapshots of this virtual machine in the day, or to go back in time across days. So since these objects were added to a policy, we can look at this data as of 2 days ago, if we wanted to, and we can go back to any snapshot within that day. So if I wanted to look at the data as of 1:26 p.m. on the 7th, I can do that. Now that's going to give us the sensitive data landscape at that point in time. It's also going to give us a picture of the permissions as of that point in time. So if permissions had changed day over day, you'll be able to go back in time and see what were the permissions on that file or folder 2 days ago, because I want to understand how it was permissioned 2 days ago versus how it's permissioned now, because I noticed now it's more open. So giving you that view to go back in time, either within the day or across days, is not something that's very easily done when you have an agent running out on the source that's doing classification on the source in real time, right? One of the benefits of having the data in our bucket is that we have multiple copies of the same data set across days, and we can give you visibility into those multiple copies across days because they sit in our platform. And that is one of the benefits of being able to do sensitive data discovery against the backup data directly. So we've gone into the dashboard and we've shown you the dashboard. We've shown you the executive level view of what my sensitive data landscape looks like. We drilled down into the objects and we looked at the actual sensitive data landscape for the objects, as well as for the files and folders, and we looked at permissions and the ability to go back in time. Now what I'm going to show you is how easy it is to get to this point, right? We've shown you a lot of the ability to do a lot of drill down and analysis, but how do I get here? And it's all policy driven, right? These are pre-built policies that come with the capability. You'll see these pre-built policies in your policies window, but you're not beholden to these. These are templates. You can change the USPII policy to contain a different data set if you wanted to. These are the objects that belong to the US PII policy, and I can see which analyzers are part of the US PII policy. If I wanted to edit the US PII policy to include other data sets, I could do that. I could do that for a predefined analyzer. These are analyzers that are pre-built by us. And as Matt mentioned, I think we have 60 plus of these built already. Lots of country-specific analyzers as well. But maybe I wanted to add some healthcare components into the US PII policy, and I didn't want to break that out into HIPAA. I could do that here, and I could change these policy templates, or maybe I need to create my own analyzer to surface data that's specific to my organization. There was a question about FERPA, and one of the things about FERPA, one of the sensitive data components within FERPA is a student ID. And student ID is unique to every higher ed institution, right? Every higher ed institution has a different format in how they structure their student ID. So maybe I want to go and create an analyzer based on a regular expression to say, surface all student IDs that start with the letter W and end with a check digit of 8 at the end, right? Regular expression will give you the ability to be able to surface strings of information that follow a particular pattern. Or maybe I have a right to be forgotten request that's been issued against my organization. Either it's a former student, former customer who may have information stored in their environment. They want to know where that information is located. And they want to be able to understand what information you have on them. There are laws now on the books in many states that mirror GDPR that give users the right to understand what sensitive information an organization is storing on them, and the ability to get that information in a report. The first part of creating that report is understanding where their sensitive data is. And if you're only looking at file shares, you're not going to get a complete picture of where that person's sensitive data might be stored. So creating a dictionary analyzer, giving as much identifying information about the individual making that right to be forgotten request or that right to know request. You can put as much identifying information in this field as possible, and then go out and scan your backup estate looking for information about that person, that individual. Maybe it's a business. Obviously there's lots of use cases for a straight dictionary lookup. So that's policy editing. We're in the create policy workflow. We're going to exit out of this workflow. We're going to go back to the management plane, and we're going to look at our pre-built policies. We're going to take some of these pre-built policies, we're going to assign them to backup objects in order to start the classification process. So we take these policies, whether they're custom policies that we've created through the create policy workflow that I just showed, or they're pre-built policies that are already created. We just take those policies, CCPA in the case of California, HIPAA in the case of healthcare, financials in the case of financial institution, GLBA as a financials regulation as well, PII for general US PII, PCI for credit cards. And we then go and say, now we want to apply them to our backup objects. Which backup objects do I want to scan that are under protection with Rubric today? And I can go and filter by backup object. I can also filter by cluster as well. Only show me the backup objects that derive from this cluster, because I don't want to scan any backup objects anywhere else. This gives you the ability to limit the workload on one cluster if you choose to do so. So we can say for VMware VMs, if I chose that, I could just go and macro select my virtual machines, click next. We give you a confirmation window that says, these are the objects you asked us to scan. These are the policies you asked us to run against those objects. If those objects already belong to a policy, you will see a minus sign next to it that says that the object is already covered by this policy. If it does not belong to that policy, you will see a green check that will say that object will be added to the policy. There is no harm or foul into re-adding objects to the same policy. We don't re-initiate the scan. We basically ignore the input, and that's what this is. That's what this is indicating here. When you hit this confirmation button, what happens is we push that workload down to the cluster. All of the scanning happens where the backup data is located. It does not happen in this control plane. This control plane is just a metadata ledger and an orchestrator of the actual classification jobs themselves. The scans happen locally on the cluster. We workload manage data classification scans as a lower priority item, meaning that it will not bump into backup or recovery workloads. Every Rubrik cluster contains a number of discrete nodes. Each of those discrete nodes could be participating in backup or recovery at any one point in time. If you have a node that is not participating in backup or recovery, we will take the CPU and memory from that node and we will apply it to these workloads. And if a backup job kicks off and all the nodes are busy, we will take anywhere where a lower priority workload is running, like data classification, we will pause that workload and we will kick off the backup job on that node itself. So we will yield any lower priority workload to something that's more critical, like backup or recovery. One of the things you might know about Rubrik, if you're familiar with us, is we're really good at workload management. It's the whole reason why you do not need to create a backup job in the Rubrik environment. You give us broad parameters on what you want to protect, how you want to protect it, and then we go out and we do it without you having to create a single job. And because of that, we can very accurately understand what workloads are running where do we have free cycles to be able to execute these lower priority workloads. So just to recap, what we showed you was we showed you the executive dashboard and the ability to understand your sensitive data landscape at a very quick view in your risk posture. We showed you the ability to drill down into the objects to look at where your sensitive data lives across the estate. This object level view gives you a nice view of that. And then we gave you a peek into how to go and take a policy, either a pre-built policy or one that you create, or even an analyzer that you create, and apply them to backup objects so that we can get to this point, which is really understanding our sensitive data landscape and get ourselves to a better posture.
All right. Well, thank you, Matt. That was just awesome. What a great presentation. Awesome demo. Just a really detailed view, and pretty cool to get into those reports and the dashboard. You know, I think so often we put all these tools in place, and then you're just sort of hoping they're working. So it's really nice to have that insight with dashboards like that and be able to dig in a little bit. So really appreciate exploring that. Now you guys can all see up on the screen here, we've got a poll for you. And what we'd like to know is what additional information you would like to know from Rubrik or about the Rubrik solution. I'm going to remind you, and I say this a lot in MegaCast, that this is an opportunity that you have when you click on this poll here. You're letting the Rubrik team know immediately what you would like from them. So sometimes I think we get a little information overload and we feel a little overwhelmed by the amount of resources that are available. This is a way that you can let Rubrik know, hey, this is exactly what I want. I want this one thing. I think this is how I would best like to approach this discussion. So a great opportunity to really connect directly to the Rubrik team. Please make sure you fill that out. Now, I can see we have lots of questions coming in, really, really detailed questions for Rubrik. Some exciting I'm watching a few new ones come in. You guys are on it today. Everyone's had their coffee. I wish we could get into these a little bit more. Unfortunately, we do have to kind of keep things rolling, so we're not going to be able to do a Q&A with Matt right now. However, we're going to make sure he's here. He's looking at the questions, so some of you will get some of those answers over live chat, and if not, we will make sure that those all get to Rubrik, and you'll get some answers back from them. So keep those questions coming in because Rubrik will be following up with you. If you are looking to learn more right away, and I did see a few questions coming in asking about demos, absolutely. Click on that Rubrik link in the handout and tab there, and you can actually go and start exploring the Rubrik website. Best of all, book that demo. As you all know, that's the best way to really dig in and get to know a solution a little bit better, so make sure you do sign up for those. And hey, while you're answering that poll, I am going to do our very first prize giveaway. How exciting is that? So we've got two big prizes here. One is going to be that $500 Amazon gift card, and then we're going to give away a couple of the Nintendo Switches. So let's start out with the $500 Amazon gift card. I'm going to remind everyone in the audience today that you do need to be here live at the webinar in order to qualify for any of these prizes. Okay, so our very first winner of a $500 Amazon gift card is Stan Schluter of Nevada. Stan Schluter of Nevada, you have won a $500 Amazon gift card. And now let's give away two Nintendo Switch consoles. So our two winners, very first winners here are Chris Turpin of North Carolina and Paul Holman of Connecticut. So Chris Turpin of North Carolina, Paul Holman of Connecticut, you have both won Nintendo Switch consoles. And Stan Schluter, you have won a $500 Amazon gift card. Congratulations to all three of you. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the event. Now don't forget, there are still lots more chances to win a prize today, plus that best question gift card from each session. So if you asked a question, we're going to be reviewing that after the fact, even if we didn't get to read it out loud today, and you could win a $50 Amazon gift card. Pretty darn cool. All right, well, let's keep zipping right along in our MegaCast today because we have another exciting presentation lined up for you. So up next, I'm so excited to introduce you to Andy Fernandez, Director of Product Marketing at Haiku. Andy, I know that you have a lot of great content to cover for us today, so I'm going to hand the mic over to you, and then Scott's going to come in and join you at the end of your presentation for some Q&A. Let's kick it off.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andy Fernandez. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Haiku. Today's topic is understanding your cloud-native data protection options. As we've seen an evolution in the world of infrastructure, we've seen organizations move from explicitly on-premises to maybe using the public cloud for some workloads, maybe to protect those workloads. And now we're seeing a vast adoption of cloud-native workloads, SaaS workloads as well. So there's a lot of decisions to make. And a lot of areas where organizations are able to benefit if they select the right data protection strategy. So with that in mind, before we continue, I want to give you a bit of an overview of who we are here at Haiku. We are headquartered in Boston. We have more than 300 employees globally, and we pride ourselves on being a multi-cloud solution and a multi-cloud service, right? Our focus is being able to deliver a purpose-built service for each of the workloads and on the infrastructure that you're protecting, whether that's exclusively on-premise, whether you have a hybrid cloud strategy, or potentially if you're 100% in the cloud. We're here to deliver consistent data protection across the board. That also includes SaaS applications. We have a global presence. We have more than 3,200 customers and counting in more than 78 countries. We're backed by Bain Capital, A-Crew, and with strategic investments from Atlassian and Cisco Investments. As I mentioned before, we're a multi-cloud organization. Our solution is delivered to any workload that you're protecting. So it includes Azure, AWS, Google Cloud Platform, Office 365, VMware, Nutanix, Dell, SAP HANA, and even additional cloud-native workloads like Kubernetes. So let's get to the topic. One of the things I mentioned is organizations are starting to adopt the cloud. But with that came a lot of myths, right? There's a lot of promises around what the public cloud can do. And it's true, it can bring a ton of benefits. But do those benefits extend to infallibility? Once you're able to use public cloud workloads, does that mean that you never have to perform a backup, that you can sleep easy knowing that your data is safe? Well, we consider that a myth, right? The common myth that we saw, especially at the beginning, I think organizations are starting to mature in their understanding of data protection in the cloud. But the myth was that data on public clouds is automatically backed up, meaning somebody else is taking care of this. I'm paying as you go. I've got all these benefits and these additional services that I can use. I don't have to worry about data protection anymore. But the truth is that even the public cloud providers are explaining that this is a shared responsibility. Yes, they are storing your data. Yes, they are providing additional services that include compute, storage, archive, and things like that. But it's a shared responsibility model. You, as an organization, not the cloud provider, are responsible for still managing that data, for making sure that you're following security best practices, but most importantly, that you're also able to protect that data. If something goes wrong, the public cloud is not responsible for that data that's lost. So the reality is that the public cloud is an amazing thing. It's highly available. There are capabilities there that are able to help you, but ultimately it's still storing it on somebody else's data center. So they're bad actors, accidents, even natural disasters, they still exist. So as long as there are people involved, we live in the same world and the intentions are the same, we have to make sure that we're able to protect that data, that we're able to recover it, whether it's because of human error, because of the growing severity and volume of ransomware attacks, or just things that are unforeseen, especially when we talk about service downtime and outages that we see in the public cloud. And there's also a compliance and legal requirement as well. So ultimately, I think there's a good understanding, and the world is coming to know that, yes, the public cloud's amazing, but we have to be very responsible about managing this data, and that we have to be accountable and have control to be able to recover, because you never know what can happen. And we're starting to see a lot of evidence of that. And these scenarios continue to pop up. Now, with that in mind, here comes the challenge. We have these new workloads that are different in nature. They come with a lot of benefits, but we're used to having our traditional data protection services and solutions to be able to do so. Can we retrofit these solutions? Are we able to use what you use on-premise or your on-prem DR for the public cloud? The reality is no. If you want to unlock the true value of the public cloud, you need data protection that's purpose-built for the public cloud. So here are some of the design considerations, especially when you're thinking about cloud native backup, whether it's AWS, GCP, Azure, even if you're thinking about SaaS like Microsoft 365 as well. First and foremost is, why would you bring a perpetual model, a perpetual license CapEx model, when you're using public cloud infrastructure to pay as you go, right? You want to make sure that the licensing, the SaaS experience is the same, not only on the cloud itself, but what you're using to protect the data that lives on the cloud. So you need to make sure that whatever you select, it's a true SaaS experience. This means that you don't need to perform extensive sizing and planning of your infrastructure, that you don't have to spend a week with your entire IT team performing an installation, ongoing configuration, and let alone management or constant upgrades. This should be simple. It should be automated. You should be able to subscribe to a service, start using it, and set and forget. Ultimately, this could go on without being said, but it's important to mention, it has to be cloud native. You have to leverage the infrastructure. You have to leverage the native snapshots that are provisioned, that are provided to you. You have to leverage the dynamics and elastic scale that these public clouds give to you. And ultimately, you have to make sure that it's DevOps enabled. And DevOps is a very generic term when we're talking about this, but you have to make sure that this spans across your entire organization. More than ever, we're seeing people from completely different roles who maybe aren't your traditional backup or IT administrators or your system administrators, but they're still responsible for provisioning these cloud native workloads. You need a solution that's easy for your entire organization to use, to be able to have a self-service operation, and to actually be able to integrate with that technology as well, especially when we're talking about identity management. And ultimately, you need complete visibility. When you're looking at your on-premise solution and you're looking at your DR solution on-prem, and then you're looking at the stuff that you're doing to cloud, it can be very difficult, be very tedious to really find out what's going on with all of my workloads. But especially with the public cloud, you want to make sure that you have one interface to view, manage, and perform your backup operations. But right now, we were just talking about backup itself, but there's so much more to data protection than just the act of backup. You have to think of it with cyber resilience in mind. Ransomware attacks, they continue to grow. They continue to be more severe. And this is one of the few industries in cybersecurity where the scale of innovation is on the side of a criminal. So you have to know that you're always going to be playing catch up. And although we have to continue investing in preventative services and making sure that your data is not accessible, you have to live with the fact that maybe it won't happen today, but eventually there will be a ransomware attack coming your way. You have to make sure that you're able to recover quickly, minimize the downtime, minimize the data loss. And that includes disaster recovery as well. These are combined. And you have to think about it with a hybrid cloud strategy in mind. Most organizations still have workloads on premises as well, apart from what they have in the cloud. So how are you going to make sure that you are efficient, that you are using your resources correctly when you have multiple tools to manage this? How could you find a way to streamline this management of all your workloads, regardless of where they live? And ultimately, as we've talked about, whether it's traditional natural disasters or ransomware or cyber criminal induced disasters, you have to make sure that you have the ability to move from region to region, from zone to zone, and you can have multiple copies of that data. So it's really important that it's not just about backup, but it's also having DR, a BCDR plan in consideration as well. But what's the reality, right? We've talked about the scenarios. We know that we need data protection, and we have a good understanding of what we need there. But what's the reality of today? Well, the reality of today is that most organizations are facing a data silo sprawl. Think about the evolution in the last 10 to 15 years. Most organizations had a primary data center and they needed traditional backup, right? To be able to back up physical servers and then to be able to back up their VMs. From there, you also realize that you need DR. You need to be able to fail over to another site in case something happens. So maybe you acquire a colo facility, a secondary site, and now you're using a replication-based solution to be able to stream data over there and then fail over and fail back when something happens. So you've already got two separate solutions for data protection, one for backup, one for DR on-prem. But then you get that knock on the door, that cloud mandate of we need to move to this OpEx model. We need to unlock the value of the public cloud. And you are asked to move some workloads, let's say to something like AWS or Azure or GCP. Well, then you need to find a solution that helps you migrate there, without downtime, without a lot of data loss. And once you're in the cloud, or once you're provisioning net new cloud workloads, you also need backup and DR for those. And this isn't even counting SaaS backup as well, right? What are you doing for Microsoft 365? So at the end of the day, most organizations, especially from mid-size to enterprise, are dealing with more than 10 interfaces just to keep their environment running, just to keep the lights on. That's not even accounting for the separate billing and licensing cycles that you're facing, the sizing and capacity planning that you do, and all of the TCO calculations that are being performed just to keep tabs on what are you doing to keep your environment available, to keep the lights on. This doesn't account either for the training, the specialization, the education, and the cycles that are having to be dedicated to each of these solutions. So what we see here is a big challenge. I want to unlock the value of all these types of workloads and they're on their respective infrastructure, but I do not want to build out so much overhead to protect them that actually slows me down. That's counterintuitive. And that's where Haiku steps in. What can Haiku offer? Well, first and foremost, Haiku allows you to not only protect your cloud native workloads, but also your on-premises workloads, whether it's exclusively on-premises or on-premises to the public cloud. You're able to have agentless, impact-free backup, migration, and DR, regardless of where it is. If you're looking to exclusively stay on-premises, Haiku is able to develop or provide a service for that. If you're looking to have a hybrid cloud model where you have it on-premises and you're using the cloud to store this data, you're able to use it as well. And if you're 100% in the cloud, you're also able to unlock the value without ever sacrificing a purpose-built solution. And really, this also brings and addresses the challenge of easy lift and shift. Why are you bringing in an additional tool apart from your data protection stack in order to move your workloads? This should all be converged. You want to be able to help minimize cost, minimize the use of resources, and get to the cloud as fast as possible. And ultimately, you need multi-cloud native protection. Gone are the days where organizations were just dedicated to one specific public cloud. There's resilience discussions around this. There's a strategy behind having multiple clouds, but there comes a challenge. Now you have multiple solutions that are usually associated with these clouds. With Haiku, you're able to solve and have purpose-built native protection for Google, for Azure, and for AWS. And ultimately, throughout this, you want to make sure that your organization is cyber resilient. And that's why Haiku is able to deliver ransomware-proof backups. You want to have assured ransomware recovery with air-gapped and immutable backups. But today's conversation is still geared more towards cloud-native workloads. So where does Haiku come in? How are we able to help enable you to protect these workloads? Well, first and foremost, it starts off at the beginning. How do you use this service? When you think about most organizations on premise, you have to download software. You have to download a 80-page configuration guide, install guide, address all of these questions, make sure your environment is correct, and then you're able to start using the solution, learn about it. Maybe in a week, you're up and running. But at Haiku, we pride ourselves with being a zero deployment, zero maintenance, and zero configuration type of service. This is true SaaS, true backup as a service, true data protection as a service with a solution that's hosted within the public cloud. And by using the cloud native cloud scale architecture, for example, the elasticity, you're able to eliminate these severe planning and sizing exercises that organizations go through. And also you're able to increase your cost savings with optimal utilization. Every application has different tiers, different levels of how long you want to retain this data and how quickly you want to be able to recover. Haiku has a cloud smart design that's balanced for any region in mind and has automatic tiering. And ultimately, you want a single pane of glass for all of these workloads, a place where if I want one instant, I want to see all of my protection scope in the public cloud. What am I protecting? What's missing? What went right? What am I able to do now? Haiku provides you with one single interface, one single experience for all of your workloads, right? This is eliminating all of these multiple interfaces that you're facing just for specific workloads. We're consolidating this experience into one. And ultimately, when we talk about the cloud native offering itself, we have to make sure that there's a storage efficiency there, right? The whole point of moving to the cloud is to pay as you go, but to keep costs down as well. And with Haiku, you have incremental forever and deduplicated backups to the cloud, to cloud storage with auto tiering. Another piece here is we want to make sure that your recovery capability is as straightforward as your ability to use Haiku. So you have easy recovery of anything from VMs, files, folders, and disks across multiple regions. We almost pride ourselves in saying one-click recovery because it's that easy. You can simply designate, find the instance, and figure out, do I want to recover the entire instance, or do I want to recover a file to an instance, or from the respective target site as well? And ultimately, one of the crucial elements here is most on-premise backup solutions are agent-based. And what they do when they realize there's an opportunity in the public cloud is they retrofit that solution to fit in the cloud. But guess what comes with them? Agents. Whether they try to disguise them or not, they're still agent-based solutions. So they are introducing a performance impact. And they're introducing and limiting your ability to create as many snapshots as you need. And so what Haiku does, it's an agentless snapshot-based backups of your cloud instances. There is no additional overhead or impact that is delivered here. You're not facing the same traditional daily, nightly backup issue that you had with on-premises solutions. And as we said, we focus on having air-gapped, secure, and immutable backups. For example, AWS Object Lock and writing to worm storage. These are things that we want to make sure that we use the native offerings. So with that in mind, I want to also mention a very exciting announcement. As of last week, Haiku has been mentioned as a visionary in the 2022 Gartner Magic Quadrant for enterprise backup and recovery software solutions. This was our first year, and it was important to note how we were chosen as visionaries. And it's because of this exact same vision of we are built for a multi-cloud strategy, for a hybrid cloud strategy. The ability for organizations to choose their workloads, that means that there is no exact right path. For some organizations, it makes total sense to stay on-premise. For most organizations, it makes a lot of sense to have a hybrid cloud model. And for these new organizations, startups, and organizations that are trying to stay lean, it makes sense to stay 100% in the cloud. But you should never have to sacrifice your resilience, your availability, just because of your data protection constraints. And that's why Haiku was chosen as a visionary, to be able to show it doesn't matter where your workloads are. What's important is that you have purpose-built protection for all of them, and you have streamlined one interface to be able to protect, to recover, and to manage all of these workloads. But with that in mind, I kind of want to provide some exciting news. Gone are the days where organizations, if you wanted to try some type of data protection software, it would take you a couple of weeks to line up a POC, a couple of conversations to be able to get there. And by that time, you've wasted so much time and energy, and you still haven't seen the solution yet. So one of the things that we're delivering is we want to show you how effective Haiku is, how easy it is. And what we've realized is there's this whole new world where organizations have people in DevOps, cloud administrators, application owners, cloud architects, who are now responsible for provisioning these workloads. But they don't have the background or the data protection foundation as a lot of these on-premises folks do. And so really what they have available to them right now, it takes a lot of time, whether it's cloud native capabilities or using solutions that are on-prem based. And so what we realize is this is a huge problem. People are being slowed down on their application development just to be able to perform traditional data protection. So what we're delivering is free data protection for AWS. This is a free tier of our BaaS service that provides you with backup, disaster recovery, VM and file level restore with complete visibility of all of your AWS EC2 instances. There are no capacity or time limits here. This isn't free for a year, free for 30 days. You can use this for life. You can protect as many instances as you like. You don't need AWS billing rights or a credit card. You can just start protecting today. Haiku does not store your data at all, so you have 100% data privacy. And once again, this is a cloud native backup solution that also includes DR. So instead of spending days, hours, not only figuring out how to protect these cloud native workloads, but actually performing the backups themselves, you can go down to a couple minutes a week, and you're able to do this for free. You're also able to explore paid and premium features, but ultimately this is a free, simple data protection for AWS EC2 instances. You can scan the code as well, and you'll have that on your mobile. You'll have the landing page where you can download it on mobile, or you're able to simply check the link on this on the chat box, and you'll be able to access this. I'm very excited for you to be able to try this. This is something that we're very excited about. So with that in mind, I'm seeing a couple of questions on the chat. So I want to make sure that we address those now.
Yeah, Andy, great presentation. Really interesting overview of some of the issues here. We do have a few questions that have come in. One of them came in about, does Haiku require agents to perform backup? So I think that came in maybe a little bit before you addressed that in your presentation, but I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how you provide the agentless backups.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we saw was a massive issue. The reason that agents exist is because organizations had, we built, or a data protection solution built something for VMware on premise, and they realized, hey, people are using all these workloads elsewhere. Let's use the same exact type of solution, the same exact architecture. Let's add agents so we're able to protect. Because Haiku is purpose-built, because we use the cloud native capabilities, and we spent the time, the resource, and the effort to do so, you don't need those agents. And without the agents, you don't have any performance impact. So that's why you can have a true impact-free backup experience.
Okay, great. So you were talking a little bit about Microsoft 365 and some other SaaS environments. They're asking, does Haiku protect any SaaS workloads?
Absolutely. So not only does Haiku protect on-premise VMs, cloud native VMs, or VMs that are born in the cloud, but also things like GKE and Kubernetes, but also Microsoft 365, right? That's a growing area where the same rules that we talked about with the public cloud around making sure you have responsibility and ownership of your data apply to emails, apply to Teams. They apply to all these things that have equally as important, if not more critical and compliant requirement data. So we also provide that same backup and DR or backup experience for Microsoft 365.
Yeah, it's always good to see that discussion of the shared responsibility model, because it's so important to understand. Here's another one. What kind of snapshots does Haiku utilize in cloud native workloads?
Absolutely. So one of the most important thing is to really unlock the value of the cloud, you have to use their functionality. So we use the cloud native functionality. For example, the AWS native snapshots is something that we use instead of creating our own or adding additional overhead. We want to make sure that we utilize the resources available to streamline this for end users.
Okay. Well, Andy, we're coming up on time here. You talked a little bit about next steps, but if anybody wants to get started with Haiku, what do you recommend?
I would recommend that if you have an AWS environment, you're curious about protecting these workloads, scan this QR code. You're going to be able to simply just get started. You don't have to go to Marketplace. You simply provision this and add your source ID, and you can start using it, no strings attached. If you don't have AWS, I recommend that you go to tryhaiku.com, which we're also adding a link on the chat, and you're going to be able to have a free trial of anything there. In my experience, the best thing to do is simply see the product. We have an NPS of over 91, and people seem to love it. So let's just show you the product. You don't need too much marketing. You simply need to experience it for yourself.
All right. Well, Andy, thanks so much for coming on here today and bringing us up to speed on what Haiku is doing.
Thank you so much.
Well, I have to echo Scott. Andy, thank you for that awesome presentation. A ton of great information. I really appreciate you sticking around to do a little bit of a Q&A with Scott. And you guys can all see that I have put up a poll question for you. Again, we would love to get your feedback. What additional resources would you like to explore from Haiku? And again, this feedback is so valuable. This is your chance. You're reaching right out to Haiku. Let them know what you would like to explore. There's no shortage of information out there. You got a little bit of a taste in this session. There's lots more to learn, so let them know what exactly they can send you or how they can reach out to support you as you're exploring. If you would like to learn a little bit more right away, I'm also going to recommend that you click on over to the Handouts tab and download Implementing Backup as a Service into Your Hybrid Cloud Data Strategy. 10 Key Factors to Consider from Haiku. It's just an awesome, awesome read, really interesting information. Be sure to download that and save it for later. I'm also going to, as Andy just said, we do have a link for you, so I'm just going to send that out in the chat. You should see that coming in. So you can click over to Haiku and start exploring. Make sure that you get a little bit of information on setting up your own demo or a chat with the Haiku team. Okay, while you're answering that poll or clicking on the Handouts tab or clicking on the Haiku website, whatever you're doing right now, let's go ahead and add a little extra excitement. We're going to give away another prize drawing here. So we're going to start again with that $500 Amazon gift card, and then we'll move into the Nintendo Switches. So again, and I will be giving away 2 Nintendo Switch consoles right now. I'm going to remind you all that you do need to be present in the live webinar in order to qualify to win a prize. And if you have any questions about full T's and C's, again, you can find them in the Handouts tab. So let's start with a $500 Amazon gift card. So our next gift card is going to Melissa Frank of Massachusetts. Melissa Frank of Massachusetts, you've won a $500 Amazon gift card. And now let's give away 2 of those Nintendo Switch consoles. I know you're all pretty excited about those. So the first one is going to Quentin Evie. I'm sure if that's a J or an I. But Quentin of North Dakota, you have won a Nintendo Switch console. And Daniel McCoy of Texas, you have also won a Nintendo Switch console. So congratulations to Melissa on your gift card, to Quentin and Daniel on your Nintendo Switch consoles. As always, we will follow up with you after the webinar wraps today and make sure that you get your prizes. And I do want to remind you all that we have a few more chances to win one of these grand prizes. And we also have that $50 Amazon gift card at the end of each session. So even if your question did not just get read out and discussed with Scott and Andy, that's all right. Don't worry. There's still a chance to win that gift card. But for now, as Scott mentioned, we're running a little low on time. We're going to keep cruising along in our MegaCast here. And we have another exciting session for you all. So let's get to it. Up next, I am absolutely thrilled to introduce our next 2 presenters, Adam Berg, Solutions Architect, Cloud Native Technical Partnerships, and Chris Rosen, Director, Product Management, IBM Cloud. And this is Casting by Veeam with Adam and Chris. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I know that you guys have a lot of awesome info to cover with us today, so I'm going to step back and the platform is all yours.
Thank you for joining today. My name is Chris Rosen. I'm Director of Product Management in IBM Cloud. I'm joined by Adam Berg by Casting by Veeam. What we're going to talk about today is protecting those critical cloud native workloads as you start that journey to cloud.
Thanks, Chris. And again, hi, everyone. I'm Adam Berg, and I'm with Casting by Veeam, and I look after our cloud native technical partnerships and solution architectures. We've got some really great content for you today. So, Chris, why don't we go ahead and get started? I want to start here, though. I want to talk about really what's driving the growth of Kubernetes and cloud native, because I think this is really important to understand that this industry, that we call cloud native and that we call Kubernetes, and the infrastructure that provides it, like IBM Cloud, is really exploding because of the increased production use cases that organizations are finding for applications deployed on top of containerized workloads and Kubernetes as that management plane. We're seeing more and more stateful workloads, databases taking advantage of the on-demand scalability that cloud native provides, and this concept that we're calling the shift left of deployment of applications. There's this thing that you hear, these terminologies called CI/CD. It's continuous development, continuous integration methodologies for new application development, and Kubernetes is enabling that, and it's enabling the speed that applications are being delivered back to the end users. Right, gone are the days of the applications being updated once a year, or every 6 months or quarterly. Applications that are being updated now every 2 weeks, every week, every day in some cases. And Kubernetes is really the enablement tool for this delivery methodology. And that's what's really driving the growth of Kubernetes. The analysts agree, right? So what are the analysts saying about Kubernetes? They're saying, over the next several years, by 2024, we're going to see 500 million new applications being deployed on top of containerized applications on Kubernetes. That's more than the last 40 years combined. By 2025, 75% of enterprises are saying that they're going to be running containerized applications. And with this new explosion of containerized applications, I think it's kind of low, but 52% of organizations are realizing that the data protection tools for this new way of deploying applications aren't adequate, right? Legacy type backup applications that were designed for a traditional infrastructure, traditional virtualized infrastructure, or even legacy apps deployed on top of public cloud just aren't cutting it. So the need for IT organizations to understand the new challenges for applications deployed on top of Kubernetes is really important.
So let's talk about some of the pain points, because we've had, a lot of conversations with customers as they start this journey, this transformation. How do I adopt cloud native tools and methodologies and containers and Kubernetes? And it comes down to thinking about, do I want to use my resources, which are scarce and hard to come by when we think about these new modern tools, versus using a managed service in the cloud and leveraging some of the benefits, although possibly losing some of the control over all of the underlying configurations that may be possible within Kubernetes. When we think about architectural decisions, there are a lot of considerations that you need to take into account when you're thinking about building something yourself versus using that cloud service. Which versions are supported? When we think about currency with the community, upgradability, performance, security, reliability, all of these key operational characteristics to running at scale, as we think about some of the stats that Adam just mentioned, with the quantity of applications and workloads that either have already moved or will be moving to Kubernetes. And then, of course, we've got peripheral considerations around storage. How do I do volume claims? How do I do software-defined storage? How do I set up my networking, load balancing? How do I architect around SLAs, high availability, disaster recovery, etc.? So all of these challenges are new, and customers that I speak with are facing these challenges to really dive into how do we solve them? How do we enable our development teams, our line of business organizations? Because at the end of the day, that's who we're trying to help innovate and deliver these cloud native applications as quickly and as securely as possible. So a quick introduction to IBM Cloud for those of you that may not be familiar with our capabilities. What we're really focused on from an IBM Cloud perspective is meeting our customers where they are in that transformation, whether that's on x86 type hardware, and we'll talk about Red Hat OpenShift on IBM Cloud. That's really going to be the focus of this conversation, but also supporting other workloads, because not everything is ready to run in a container yet. So whether that's running in VMware or on other architectures like Power or Systemz, to be able to do that in IBM Cloud, where we're very focused on the open source aspects, the portability, our emphasis on security, which is highlighted by the financial services cloud controls that we have in place. We're working with a number of, it started out as 8 of the world's largest banks. Now we've grown that forum substantially to include up to 80 regional banks to get their input, ensure that we've got the right auditability and controls and protection around that data. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to how do we encrypt? And we've got industry leading FIPS 140-2 level 4 encryption, which we're the only cloud provider that allows that or supports that. And essentially that gives you the trust. It's the technical foundation that you can run those critical workloads in our IBM cloud data centers and regions and know that you are the only ones that control the keys, the access to those applications and that data. IBM Cloud Satellite launched about 18 months ago, and this is our answer to what Gartner refers to as distributed cloud. Other analysts may refer to it as local cloud as a service. Essentially, it's all the same premise. It's how do I bring fully managed, SRE managed, SLA compliant offerings outside of our IBM cloud infrastructure and to be able to run those where you want them. So maybe that's in your data center, maybe that's in an edge location, which could be a manufacturing plant, a retail location, hospitals. When you have challenges around data sovereignty or latency issues, this is where IBM Cloud Satellite can come in and really address those use cases, because now we're bringing the set of our platform as a service capabilities, whether it's Red Hat OpenShift on IBM Cloud, it's our managed databases, it's event streams, all of these things that we can distribute and manage wherever you need them to run. So running in proximity to your data source, so that way we can modernize those applications there and then move them to cloud. Or in the example of the manufacturing, where I need to be able to run and analyze video in real time versus sending that data to the cloud, running some analysis, and then sending it back. By then, maybe the line is defective, or we've detected that someone doesn't have the right safety equipment on, and it may be too late. So bringing that cloud native capability to run in these locations where generally they don't have the skills required to run Kubernetes and OpenShift clusters. So let IBM manage that for you. And of course, we support using your existing hardware. We could provide the entire kind of cloud in a box where you roll something off the truck, power it, network it, and you're ready to go. You could run it in other cloud providers, whether that's AWS, Azure, Google, etc., and all have it managed in a very consistent, comprehensive manner. So the next thing I want to talk about is that developer persona. And Adam mentioned CI/CD and the ability to automate those pipelines and ensure that we've got the right consistency. Today, those developers are struggling with really the basic use case is innovation. I need to be able to push and create as much code as quickly and as securely as possible. How do we automate those pipelines? How do we ensure that we've got the right integrated vulnerability scanning and source code scanning, and ensuring that we're bringing that security focus left in those pipelines? It's really building the tools to integrate it so developers can focus on what's important to them. It's solving challenges and value to their end consumers, not how do I consume my corporate IT security policies. We need to automate that and build in the tooling to make it seamlessly, so that way they can develop those cloud native apps and then, as Adam mentioned again, update those frequently, whether it is daily or even hourly, where we're pushing out new capabilities, new features, security fixes. And that's, again, highlighting the importance of velocity as well as security and compliance and insights to that containerized workload. So Red Hat OpenShift on IBM Cloud, this is a very busy chart, so I encourage you to watch the playback, pause it, grab a screenshot. There's a lot that goes into the value of a managed service. I explain this to my customers as moving up the line of responsibility. So IBM handles SLA, availability, updates, remediations, operating system, OpenShift itself. We're going to provide all of that so you can focus on solving your challenges. The 99.99% SLA, which is an industry leading when compared to our other vendors in this space. It's building in the resiliency, those operational characteristics with highly available masters, multi-zone clusters where we're distributing those workloads to different data centers. It's building in the security, the encryption, the auditability, the insights, so that way our customers can really, again, focus on building applications. helping their consumers, whether it's chatbots with systems of record, it's modernizing those traditional applications. It allows our customers to focus on that, not deploying, standing up, maintaining Openshift clusters.
Yeah, so thank you, Chris, for talking about, day zero, some of those challenges. Day one, what are the developers thinking about? Now, day two, this is what operations IT, that they're really talking to us about some of these challenges. And we're in the business of getting you and your customers to production. And some of those pain points out there really are difficult to solve when you're really have been traditionally focused on traditional infrastructure and traditional applications. And the paradigm sort of shifts when you move into cloud native and Kubernetes and Openshift, right? Things like, how do I deliver backup and recovery, data mobility across clusters, full cluster disaster recovery? How do I manage SLAs for the availability and scalability of my applications? And then how do I manage data governance, right? How do I make sure that the data that I protect is actually residing in the proper data centers? And then, that's really what we're focused on here at Kasten, is solving day two data management challenges and helping customers get to production. So let's talk about Kasten K10 and what we're delivering. And let's not forget about ransomware, right? This is another huge topic that customers should rightfully be wary of when they're talking about moving to production. I need to be able to protect my Kubernetes clusters against advanced attacks. And just because you're moving your data from traditional infrastructure where you know how to protect that against ransomware, or you should know how to protect it against ransomware, we still have to think about those same challenges as we move into Kubernetes. And I think a lot of people still struggle with how to solve this particular challenge. And of course, here at Kasten K10, we're all about helping solve this challenge for you. So we're all about, here at Kasten by Veeam, we're all about solving your day two data management challenges. And we're laser focused on three main capabilities when we partner with companies like IBM Cloud for delivering those Kubernetes services: backup and restore, full cluster disaster recovery, and then application mobility, specifically for Kubernetes. So what makes Kasten K10 by Veeam special and unique in this market space? Number one, we are built for Kubernetes. We're Kubernetes only application, built from the ground up. We integrate natively with Kubernetes APIs, so we can leverage all those cloud native application principles and deployment methodologies that really deliver on the value of cloud native. We're built with security in mind from day one, delivering robust role-based access controls, all the authentication mechanisms that are necessary to secure your environment, industry standard encryptions built in from day one. You're secure in protecting your data and delivering data availability with Kasten K10. We support the broadest range of ecosystem, not only with IBM Cloud, but also with our partnership with Red Hat on IBM Cloud, and the applications that are being delivered on top of Kubernetes. So we've got the biggest partnership and integrated capabilities with all the most popular stateful-based applications being deployed on top of Kubernetes today as well. And then we're delivering this with IBM Cloud with ease. And we'll show you that this is part of our demo later on in today's presentation, but we're delivering this with not only ease of deployment, but also state-of-the-art user interfaces, integration with native Kubernetes APIs and all the workflows that you're already using for your cloud native-based applications. And we're making this extremely extensible for extending this into your applications to make sure that we're delivering the data availability your organization needs. And just to follow up on Red Hat, Kasten K10 protects Red Hat OpenShift on IBM Cloud, if it wasn't already clear. And we're delivering that as a native service delivered right on top of IBM Openshift on IBM Cloud, delivered right through the IBM Cloud marketplace. I'm completely Red Hat OpenShift certified. We're a level 3 certified operator, and you can deploy us right through the operator hub within Red Hat OpenShift itself. And you can also deploy us right from the IBM Cloud marketplace. So there's many different ways to deploy your Kasten K10 through IBM Cloud, and we'd love to show you what this looks like in our demo. So let's jump right into that demo, and I hope you guys love deploying of Red Hat OpenShift on IBM Cloud with Kasten K10. Welcome to this demo of protecting Red Hat OpenShift on IBM Cloud with Kasten by Veeam. In this demo, we'll create a brand new OpenShift cluster on IBM Cloud infrastructure. We'll take you through this with just a few easy steps. Right within the IBM Cloud console, we'll start with creating an OpenShift cluster by giving the cluster a name. Specify a few settings, and then we click Create. In just a few minutes, we'll have a brand new IBM Cloud OpenShift cluster ready to install applications. Once our installation is complete, we'll open up the OpenShift web console by clicking the blue button in the upper right-hand corner, and we can validate that our OpenShift cluster is up and operational. We'll bring our CLI up and connect to the IBM Cloud cluster with the IBM Cloud CLI tool. This allows us to run OC commands against our new OpenShift cluster. As you can see, our nodes are online, and then we can also connect and see the open namespaces. Our first step here is going to be enabling the OpenShift Data Foundation add-on. This enables a Ceph-based CSI storage integration into this OpenShift cluster. We can validate that our cluster add-on is now installing and enabling. Once our storage class is complete, we're going to annotate those storage classes to make them the default. As you can see, the new OpenShift Ceph CSI storage classes are now installed into the cluster. Along with the volume snapshot classes. We'll annotate the volume snapshot classes for Kasten's best practices. Our next step is to create a new project for the Kasten.io application. We'll call this project Kasten-io. From here, we'll go into the Operator Hub and we'll search for Kasten. Kasten Certified Operator is selected and we click Install. We're going to be selecting a specific namespace on the cluster for the certified operator, and we'll select the Kasten.io namespace and click Install. The K10 Helm operator is now installing into the cluster. Once this is installed, we can now deploy Kasten K10. We'll click K10 and click Create. Select the defaults and click Create. In just a few minutes, we should have Kasten K10 pods up and running. Let's validate that from the CLI using get pods. We can see that the Kasten pods are up and running. We'll do a port forward over to Kasten K10's graphical interface, where we can now start the configuration of Kasten. On our first login, we'll have to validate and accept the end user license agreement and click Accept. As you can see, we're here at the Kasten K10 dashboard. Kasten automatically discovers all the applications existing in the cluster. The first step to protecting applications is going to Settings and creating a location profile. Location profiles are used as the backup target destination. In this case, we'll use IBM Cloud S3 compatible object storage. We'll click S3 compatible, enter our S3 access key and secret, and the endpoint URL for your object bucket. Specify the region and the name of the bucket. Click Save Profile. We now have a profile that we'll use as our backup target destination. Let's create our first backup. We'll select our WordPress application that's installed inside this cluster. As you can see, this WordPress application has 2 persistent volume claims. We'll create a new backup policy. We'll specify a daily backup. And we'll run this policy now. Back on the dashboard, we can see the progress of our first policy backup. And just like that, we've protected our WordPress application. Let's try a recovery. In Applications, we can go to find our WordPress application and choose Restore. Select the restore point, and in this demo, we'll restore to a new namespace. We'll call this WordPress clone. We can see all the items that are being recovered, and we'll click Restore. Back on the Kasten dashboard, we can now see the application as it's being recovered. And our restore is complete. As you can see, we now have a new application called WordPress Clone. Let's validate in the CLI that all our pods are now up and running inside the WordPress Clone, and they are. And our application is up and running. Thank you, and this has been our demo of protecting IBM Cloud Red Hat OpenShift with Kasten K10 by Veeam. All right, well, thank you. Thank you for everyone for your time. Thank you to Actual Tech Media, and I guess we'll jump into some live Q&A. So, Chris, any last words?
No, thanks again, everyone. I know we rushed, we covered a lot, so please reach out to us if you have additional follow-up questions. We'd love to meet with you and discuss your use cases.
All right, let's do some Q&A.
Oh man, Adam, Chris, thank you for that fascinating presentation. I always learn something so interesting from the Kasten by Veeam team, and this was no exception. Really appreciate that. I can see we've got a lot of great questions coming in, and I do want to jump into those. We've got a few minutes for Q&A here, but before we start that out, I just want to point out to all of you, again, we've got that poll question up on the screen for you here. What additional information would you like to get from Kasten by Veeam? What else do you want to dig into? Adam and I are going to get into some Q&A here in just a moment, but this is, again, a great chance to make sure that you get the follow-up that you need after the presentation today. So please do take a second now and fill that out. Adam, again, thank you so much for being here for that awesome presentation.
Well, yeah, thank you, everyone, for sticking around, and I do appreciate you taking time out of your busy day, so thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we're short on time, so I want to dive right into the questions. You ready to rock here, Adam?
Let's do it.
Okay. We got a few questions about migration. So let's talk about that a little bit. And in particular, and I know you answered this one on live chat, but I think Ross's question is a good one, so I'd like to give the audience a chance to hear. Can you tell us a little bit about how Kasten is going to handle moving between, say, on something on cloud and on-prem clusters?
Yeah. So traditionally, this has been a really difficult challenge for applications, especially stateful-based applications deployed on top of Kubernetes, is how do I migrate them between clusters, especially clusters that are running on different infrastructure, or the applications are deployed on different storage classes. One of the key differentiators for the Kasten K10 product is our ability to move applications between any cluster on any platform, whether that's on-prem, up in the public cloud. Pick your favorite Kubernetes distribution, pick your favorite storage infrastructure. We can move the application between any cluster. And we do that through our ability to do what we call application transformation during the app migration process. So we can change anything about that application as it moves from one cluster to another. One of the most common things is changing the underlying infrastructure that the application should be deployed on top of. But we can change anything about that application, from the ingress or load balancing configuration, or pick you name it. We can change that anything about the application as it migrates from one cluster to another. So that's a key differentiator for our product.
I love that. Okay, and hearing lots about agility and adaptability. Cheryl here is wondering if you can clarify if Kasten K10 can integrate with third-party tools or databases.
Yeah. So again, one of our big, and I love these questions. One of the biggest capabilities, or another key differentiator for our product, is the level of out-of-the-box integration for the most popular applications, stateful-based databases that are being deployed on top of Kubernetes. So, I'm not going to be able to name them all, but think about MySQL, RDS, Cassandra, MariaDB. Boy, the list is long. We have the ability out of the box to have native integrations into those, but we also give the developers the ability to write their own integrations into their applications as well through what we call application blueprints. So we can integrate natively with anything, essentially, but out of the box, we do have some certified integrations as well. You can find out all of that over at docs.kasten.io is where I recommend to take a look at more information on that feature.
Well, Adam, we are going to have to wrap it up pretty quick here, but you gave us a few uniques and things that are really special about Kasten by Veeam, and we had someone here wondering, and I think you'll be able to address this for them. If there are open source backup solutions and object storage in Kubernetes, why would they go with a commercial product?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We hear this. This is one that we hear basically every time we speak about our product. Is there are free alternatives to do backup, application backup in Kubernetes, right? This is the open source space. There's a lot of free alternatives out there. We are a commercial product. What I say about free is it's free like a free puppy. It's going to there's a lot of hidden costs involved with free software. Namely, you're not getting enterprise class support. You're not getting enterprise class scalability and performance and tested an entire global 24/7 development and support team behind you with your application. And the additional capabilities beyond simple backup and recovery, namely app mobility and full cluster DR, and the ability to protect against ransomware are things that you don't find in free alternatives out there. But with that being said, we do have a completely free tier that is without any feature restrictions as well. So there is with community support. So we do have a completely 100% free edition of our Kasten K10 product that you can try out and install in your clusters today.
I love that. And, we did actually get...
And that's free forever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah. That's very important. Yeah. And we did get somebody, Christopher, had written in and asked about the customer service, and you've mentioned that support a few times, and I just want to echo that I've had nothing but incredibly positive experiences with the Kasten by Veeam team and lots of experts there. So if you're wondering if service is important to you out there, which I'm sure it is for all of us, I can assure you you're in good hands. And if you want to test that out for yourself, visit the website. Is there anything else, Adam, that you'd like to let people know out there for getting started?
Yeah, one more thing that we're giving away to the community is a completely free Kubernetes learning platform. So if you're just starting your Kubernetes journey and you want to learn more, or you want to actually try out live interactive Kubernetes cluster, head over to learning.kasten.io today. That's completely 100% free Kubernetes training. You can get certifications and badges and accomplishments over there and start your learning journey. It's a lot of free labs with live real Kubernetes clusters right in your browser. And it's 100% completely free. And it's something that we're giving back to the community just to raise everyone's knowledge around this amazing new technology that we call Kubernetes and cloud native.
I absolutely love that. I think so often we hear, and even in our keynote today, we were chatting about, some things that might just seem like common knowledge, but and it's such a wonderful thing to have free access to that. And I love that you can get badges and things. I'm very motivated by gamification, so that's awesome.
Yes.
Okay, well, Adam, I want you to know you got a couple of high fives from the audience today. Peter wants you to know that he's stealing the free like a puppy face. That's a great one. Eric's wondering, could you repeat that link for training one more time for us?
It's learning.kasten.io.
Learning.kasten.io. Yes. Head on over there right now. Write it down in your browser right now. Learning.kasten.io. Head on over. Yeah. All right. Well, Adam,
nothing
thank you so much
free,
for being.
Right? So go ahead and check
nothing beats nothing. And in this case, it really is free. There's no puppies attached to your learning.
That's right.
All right. Well, Adam, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all, and thank you to Actual Tech Media.
All right. Well, I hope you guys are all heading over to the site to get some educational opportunities. That's so exciting. And thank you so much for everyone that asked a question and answered that poll question. That was a lot of fun. All right, well, it looks like we're running a bit low on time, so we are going to cruise right along. I do also want to remind you to head to the Captain by Veeam link in the Handouts tab, and you can actually find a free ebook in there. It's the Guerrilla Guide to Getting Started with Kubernetes, Foundation Edition. Absolutely fascinating read. Great way to learn more after we wrap up today. So go ahead, download that, save for later. And for now, let's move right along because we've got another prize giveaway. So we're going to do another $500 Amazon gift card, and then we've got a few Nintendo Switches to give away as well. So a quick reminder that you must be present at the webinar here to win. And our next winner of a $500 Amazon gift card today is Yimin Zhu of Missouri. Yimin Zhu of Missouri, you have won a $500 Amazon gift card. And then I'm going to give away 3 Nintendo Switch consoles right now. So that's 3 winners who are present here today in the audience. Natalie Doran of North Carolina, Stephen Fair of Pennsylvania, and Tom Manzi of Massachusetts. Tom Manzi of Massachusetts. So Natalie Doran of North Carolina, Stephen Fair of Pennsylvania, and Tom Manzi of Massachusetts. You have all won a Nintendo Switch console, as well as Yimin Zhu, who got a $500 Amazon gift card. That's a lot of good stuff right there. So congratulations to you all. And I do want to remind you that there's one more opportunity to win some of these awesome things. So stay tuned for that. And there's the best question asked in each console, and that's a $50 Amazon gift card. So please do remember to keep getting those questions in. We will follow up with you after the fact. But for now, folks, I do not know how this happens so quickly every time. I say that every time. Time flies when you're having fun here. We have already come to our very last presentation in the MegaCast today, and I promise you it's a great one. I'm so excited to introduce you all to Anthony Dutra, Technical Marketing Engineer at Zerto. Anthony, as always, thank you so much for joining us. You are the grand finale on our MegaCast today. I can't wait to hear what you have in store. So without any further ado, the platform is all yours.
My name is Anthony Dutra. I'm a technical marketing engineer at Zerto, and I'm excited to share with you today data protection as code, introducing you what is really the next generation in disaster recovery, Zerto for Kubernetes. So I always like to begin at a very high level, talking about where the industry sort of is today and where it was and how IT is evolving overall. Really back in the day, traditionally, we would look at our applications as we would look at the hardware in our data center. It was very much codependent on one another because in case an application grew, you basically had to pick up the phone, call your storage vendor, order more disks, order more compute servers. It was really more centralized and focused around the data center itself. But developers were more leveraging this waterfall approach methodology to developing applications. All right, one piece is done. Now, do we have the resources to deploy the next features or the next piece? Let's work with the IT team to build that. As technologies like virtualization and containers sort of started to be initially adopted, we really decoupled, or what I would call virtualized, our infrastructures and therefore our applications. And it started to matter less and less where necessarily these apps ran and how we were kind of hosting and giving our IT resources to these developers to build the apps that are running our business. So technologies like VMware, Hyper-V really decoupled much of the apps from the hardware itself. And you see application architectures like hyper-converged fit this new model of software over the hardware itself. And from now, where we see things moving towards, and really the power is moving to the developers themselves, is this new era of decentralized IT and applications. So many of the companies today and developers today are adopting containers for a variety of reasons, and we'll dive into that more in detail throughout this presentation. But what the main thing to take away here is the evolution of IT has shifted more to the left side, and developers are now more in control because they are quickly trying to generate these features in these apps to get that new business, through that application itself. So it's a much more rapid world that we're living in compared to the IT of the past, where the data center was a much more centralized focus. And we're seeing this through data. So this is a statistic that I was most recently shared, where companies rather, are containerizing their applications, and they're doing so by just straight up refactoring them from virtual machines, right? That sort of virtualized layer, as we talked about before, into these containers. And what they're finding out quite quickly is the fact that security and sort of data protection are still main problems that, okay, yes, we're adopting containers to be much more efficient, and we'll discuss, sort of those details as to why that is in a little bit, but we're doing so at too much of a rapid pace, and we're doing so right into production, which is causing a lot of open gaps, a lot of security concerns in terms of ransomware attacks, and the adoption to containers, to say the least, isn't that pretty. So why containers? Why sort of softwares like Kubernetes? Why are we hearing that today? Sort of what are the benefits? A lot of it comes down to the minimization of, again, that IT resources that we spoke about before. It used to be the hardware itself dictated what the developers could do. Now the developers can deploy their code pretty much anywhere, and they only wanted to run it on the most minimal hardware requirements possible. So for a business, this minimizes overhead, increases the portability and consistency of the applications across, let's say you want to go to multiple cloud providers. You can host it in many different places because, again, it's all centered around the code, which accelerates development of the app itself, and dollars back into your business when new features and stuff are released. So at a very high level, it's touching on, Kubernetes and containers for business applications, right? When you refactor into these things, you're becoming much more efficient. You can scale the app much more easily, and it is just much more agile, mainly due to the fact that you are able to move it seamlessly. It's just code, right? You're no longer focused on the hardware. So what exactly are containers? You can think of a container as a standard unit of software that is just running at an isolated portion of, let's say, a server, and it can easily be moved from one environment to another. There isn't much complication in terms of, what is the storage behind it? What are we using there? We're not focused on that with a container. We just want to run the process that it is coded to run. Now, this is very simple to implement if you're just building a, very simple application, and it starts very small. But as you can imagine, as your developers create, sort of refactor these apps into these multiple containers, you need some way to orchestrate and make sure that they all play nicely and talk together. And this is where Kubernetes is really becoming the de facto standard, almost like basically it is its own way of just managing and orchestrating the containers themselves and scaling them much more easily. So with Kubernetes today, right, imagine you have taken an application, your developers broken it down into all these different containers. Now you need some way to sort of automate it, deploy it, talk about that scalability and load balancing back, to the users trying to access these applications. So Kubernetes is what offers the containerization, the orchestration to become a full application, while still taking advantage of the hardware resources required, only the minimum amount required. So it's managing everything from the storage to the services and networking. But where it sort of falls short is the realm of disaster recovery, backing up, and that data mobility that we talked about before. Sure, it is containerized and we're able to orchestrate all these different processes to work together, but now how do we move them from one, let's say, cloud provider to another? And this is where Kubernetes is sort of struggling as a challenge, and this is why the adoption is running into this problem, because we're, again, still having to deal with the same stuff that we've dealt with in our previous iterations of our applications when they were a virtual machine, right? So there is really, into Kubernetes, in our previous iterations of our applications when they were a virtual machine, right? So there is really, into Kubernetes itself, no DR and backup strategy inherent to it. There's still persistent data within these applications, right? Netflix, although that's a fully microservices and containerized apps, still remembers your profile and what you want to watch. So there's still very much all of that to be concerned about. And then just think of all of the bad actors and ransomware issues out there today that might cause an application to go down. And now that you're sort of adopting this new framework of containers and Kubernetes, well, how do we protect using that same technology, which is a little bit more nuanced than what some might be used to in the development realm, or how they used to develop previously. So really, traditional data protection, when we think about that, we're thinking about like, okay, old school backups, backing up to tape. It really doesn't meet the needs of this new stateless and serverless sort of developer mantra being adopted as we see applications move more towards containerization and leveraging Kubernetes itself. So traditional sort of backup format won't really work for this sort of stateless architecture. It really lacks sort of this purpose-built protection. What good is a backup of an application that is hosting your social media site 4 hours ago when your developer made updates 10 minutes ago, right? You need to have that sort of disaster recovery in place, or just that protection in place, in order to come back online to time in that application that is going to serve value dollar back to your business and not lose it. So again, it needs to fall under where traditional data protection falls short, is it's not application centric overall. So what to look for when you are considering, okay, we've containerized some of these applications, we've refactored them from our VMs, we've broken them down into many different containers. We're using Kubernetes to orchestrate them together to now build this microservice and create this app that we had before. We're taking advantage of it. How do we protect it? You want to look for something first that's purpose-built. It needs to run on Kubernetes and be for Kubernetes. And you don't really care about the storage infrastructure under it, because that's just another layer of hassle that you would need to manage, or GUI you would need to jump through in order to protect this single application at a particular point in time. So it's not it needs to be very flexible. It needs to support a multi-cloud strategy, so you're not worried about, hey, I'm now stuck with AWS and their charges in this public cloud when I could take advantage of services, let's say Azure or GCP. I want to replicate this same application to these other clouds, and you don't want anything sort of giving you red tape to do so. And of course, just from a performance perspective, you want something scalable that's going to be reliable. Ensure your application is up. And really, that is exactly our vision here at Zerto. And what really our goal is to take our enterprise class virtual machine replication technology and cloud data protection that we're known for, and extend it into this realm of containers and Kubernetes. And that's exactly what we've built with Zerto for Kubernetes. So Zerto for Kubernetes is a continuous backup, DR. You can do things like long-term retention and really just near synchronous replication of a application being hosted in Kubernetes to many different cloud providers or on-prem itself. So that's one thing I always love to talk about, is the fact that Kubernetes is common across all cloud providers. Again, it's the de facto software that is orchestrating all your different containers into that microservice. So being able to move it from Azure to EKS to GKE and do so without leaving the command line is of huge dollar value back to your business when sort of thinking about your applications themselves. So what Zerto for Kubernetes offers to these apps is that continuous data protection. is basically always on replication. It's near synchronous, maybe about 5 to 10 second difference between each of what we call checkpoints being tracked inside of a recovery journal. We're seeing all the changes that are happening within that Kubernetes cluster and that app that you've defined, and we're making sure that you can roll back to a very specific point in time before that application either went down or you need to move it somewhere and put it up to a particular state, right, a particular point in time. So you're doing so with the granularity of pretty much seconds to minutes of moving these Kubernetes applications. So what this basically brings to data protection is everything that, well, a lot of stuff that just basic Kubernetes itself is lacking from a disaster recovery perspective. This is all Zerto for Kubernetes is built right into the console itself. So you, excuse me, the CLI. So you're never really leaving the command line console overall. Your developers can integrate it as part of their, workflows and say, hey, at the end of my feature updates, let me just, maybe make a checkpoint, and if something does happen, we can just replicate it off to the second site. We know that that's already set up for us. It's application centric. Again, it's built in Kubernetes itself, so you're using kubectl to execute different commands of creating virtual protection groups. Hey, we want to make sure these pods are protected at a certain rate, but not these ones. This is what Zerto for Kubernetes allows from a flexibility standpoint. This obviously simplifies workflows, as I mentioned before. Now your developer can integrate DR into their sort of workflows themselves, and they can move it between many different clouds. So as you saw in our list of compatible services in the previous slide, if they want to move it from AWS EKS to Azure, they can, right? And they can simply use the same CLI that they're very much used to. Zerto for Kubernetes also has an analytics component to it, which I will show in the demo. And it just shows you're not managing anything through here. You're just showing, hey, this is my RPO and RTO. This is where the failover is in this process. How do I manage it? What are sort of the figures that maybe the CXO wants to see in terms of how all of this is performing from a DR standpoint? And there's a ton of integrations with APIs in order to work with and automate sort of disaster recovery strategy using this tool. So data protection as code is the main thing that is great about Zerto for Kubernetes. It is installed with Helm. You're again using kubectl, ZRT is the command, and then you basically from there define things like virtual protection groups as to what pods are being protected. You're basically taking anything that is in that Kubernetes cluster down to the config maps and making sure that it is able to be replicated and protected in a data consistent manner in case something goes down. Again, you can see from the slide here an RPO or recovery point objective of only 5 seconds for this snapshot, right? It's insane how quickly you can roll back in case of an attack, get the persistent data that those Kubernetes applications are hosting back online, right? Your application back online, return value back to your business. These are the virtual protection groups that I was talking about earlier. Basically, you can select the specific pods as well as persistent volumes to a level of protection that, let's say you want to replicate locally, you want to replicate to a secondary cloud, you're able to pick and choose how you logically segment these different Kubernetes resources and protect them in right order, consistent, right? So it's coming back online when you need it to. Analytics for reporting and alerting. Again, this is that dashboard that I mentioned before where you can just get really good reports and really good views of your full disaster recovery environments and how Zerto for Kubernetes or the replication that you have set up is playing a part within it. All right, now while we have about 3 minutes left, I am going to quickly show a demo of us replicating a WordPress site hosted in Microsoft Azure. to the Amazon AWS EKS service. And we're going to see that that site is, running a basic WordPress site, and we're going to hack it. We're then going to, before we replicate it, replicate it over to that AWS site, and then bring it back online in AWS itself. All right, so I'm just going to cut over to the video now. Let's see if this works. All right, so what we have spun up here is a WordPress site. You can see that the front end is hosted in one pod, and that the MySQL server is hosted in another. It's running Kubernetes. This is the external IP address. You just saw the site there. And we have it protected in one virtual protection group right there. All right, so this is the WordPress site. It's all clean, just a basic WordPress site. There's only one post there, that's hello world. And now we're going to make sure that we checkpoint it to say, hey, all right, our app is done. This is when we want to take a checkpoint of it. So we're tagging that checkpoint. All right, so now that checkpoint of that site running in AKS is there, we're going to see all of the checkpoints, right? That 5-second difference that Zerto for Kubernetes is using. Right? We can see that we've already defined some other checkpoints there. So now that is a version of the healthy site that we have online. We're going to hack that site by, somebody left open the admin console, left it all default at the WordPress site. So now they've been hacked. We're just going to speed a little bit up here for time. You're going to see the hacked post there. And now that we're back at the console, we're going to start what is called a failover test with that checkpoint that we defined before. This is going to replicate the WordPress site and its SQL server to the the AWS EKS service. Is running now in Azure AKS, and it's going to bring that site back online to the healthy point that we checkpointed. And now what we're doing is typing, just watching it. We're going to watch the process forward. So again, you're never leaving the console. You're a developer. You can just stay in the console and initiate this process right off the gate. All right. Now we're also showing very quickly Zerto Kubernetes Analytics. You can see the details of the VPG there. You can see where Zerto for Kubernetes plays in the much larger data protection strategy of your virtual machines, right? Traditional Zerto. And now we can jump over to this monitoring tab super quick and just see the process of a failover task. So I'm going to quickly cut ahead to when it cuts ahead. And it's done. So now that it has replicated to the AWS site, we're going to pull up, what are the pods running at this site. And there is the external IP for the healthy WordPress site back up and running. So I'm going to copy that and put that into the web browser. And now you can see hosted in AWS, replicated from Azure, the WordPress site that is now up and running and healthy. So that itself is super exciting. We can see that, this automation, this non-disruption of your Kubernetes application provides just a ton of benefits. The protection is built in, so you're saving your developer cycles on just a whole bunch of work. You're not locked into any vendor. As you saw, we can move between both clouds very easily, and it's very fast to deploy overall. So we covered a lot today. I know I'm a little over time, so I will wrap up. We have industry trends. We talked about, how containers are being adopted. They're being adopted rapidly, and security is still a main concern. Kubernetes is great for orchestrating all those containers, but when it comes to data protection and disaster recovery, it falls a little short. Traditional data protection lacks when it comes to being able to protect these applications right down to their pod or persistent volume level. And what to look for in terms of core capabilities are these data protection as code or application-centric focused softwares like Zerto for Kubernetes, which allows for that dynamic disaster recovery capability overall. So I thank you all for your time today, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Well, thank you, Anthony. I think I can speak for the audience. We definitely did enjoy that. Lots of great info. I got a couple of high fives coming in on the live chat, which is always nice to see. And you can all see that I have put up that poll question for you one last time. Please do let us know what you would like to learn, what additional information you would like to receive about the Zerto solution. So again, I'm just going to remind you of this. This is an opportunity to reach out directly to the Zerto team. So you're letting them know this is how you can help me learn a little bit more, get the info that I need. So instead of you having to do the work, they're just going to hand it right to you. So let them know what follow-up you would like to get about Zerto. And again, thank you to all of you who are answering the poll and asking questions. Elena, I agree, great content. This has been just a really exciting day. Fred, I saw a thank you from you as well. Lots of great info coming in. I'm glad it's been resonating with you. So great feedback from all of you today, and I really appreciate that. It's been some really incredible presentations. I wish we could stop and do a little bit more of a Q&A with Anthony, but unfortunately we are going to have to move things along there because we have pretty much reached the end of our time here in the MegaCast. But before we run away, and I know you're all saying, Jess, you promised us there'd be another prize giveaway, and I meant it. So let's do our very last prize giveaway. I am going to remind you, as you're filling out that poll there, also make sure that you click into the handouts tab. You can pull up, if you click on that Zerto link, the state of data protection from Kubernetes, great expansion on what we just heard about today. So definitely worth the read. Make sure you explore that handout. Okay, now I promised you a prize giveaway, and we'll do it. So we've got one more $500 Amazon gift card, and then I'm going to give away 3 Nintendo Switch consoles. That's 3 more. That'll bring us up to 10. I promised you 10, and that'll bring us right there if you're counting along at home. So first up, our $500 Amazon gift certificate is going to Betsy Norton of Washington. Betsy Norton of Washington, you have won a $500 Amazon gift certificate. And our next 3 winners of a Nintendo Switch console are Andrew Blodgett of Ohio, John Botts of Iowa, and David Tomsovich of Delaware. So that's Andrew Blodgett of Ohio, John Botts of Iowa, and David Tomsovich of Delaware. Now, I did get asked to read the entire winners list again, so I will do this all in one big go here. So buckle up. First gift card went to Stan Schluter. And then we had 2 Nintendo Switches going to Chris Turpin and Paul Holman. Then there was a gift card going to Melissa Frank, and then a Nintendo Switch going to Quentin Evie and Daniel McCoy. Then there was another gift card going to Yimin Zhu, and then a Nintendo Switch going to Natalie Doran, Stephen Fair, and Tom Manzi. And then we had a gift card going to Betsy Norton, and then our last 3 Nintendo Switches going to Andrew Blodgett, John Botts, and David Tomsovich. So those are all our winners today. Congratulations to you all. We will follow up with you after the webinar wraps today. And again, you must be present here at the live webinar in order to win. Don't forget that we do still have those best questions asked cards. So if you asked a question in the webinar today, there's still a chance to win, and we will follow up once we've had a chance to review all of those questions. We want to make sure we look at all of them. All right. Well, I do want to remind you all before you head out today to check out the Actual Tech Media ransomware guide. It's in the handouts tab for you there. You can also find a link right there on the slide. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware. You know, we were chatting a bit earlier about that Kubernetes learning site. that Kasten by Veeam offered. And it really is important to kind of occasionally dig in and make sure that you have a solid understanding of all the different terms and things that we throw around, solutions and risks. So whether or not you're brand new to ransomware or you're well down the line, you're very well versed, there's going to be something for you there. So definitely take a look, explore that ransomware.org site, and make sure that you spend a little bit of time with that after the webinar today. Now, if you are on the webinar and you're thinking to yourself, well, this seems like a lot of fun. I'd like to hang out and have a conversation with Jess. Well, great. I'd like to talk to you too. So if you'd like to get involved with an EcoCast or a MegaCast, just reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. We would absolutely love to hear from you and maybe get the chance to work with you. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank all of our speakers from Rubrik, Haiku, Kasten by Veeam, and Zerto for making this MegaCast possible. A very special thank you to all of you for attending, asking some great questions today. I had so much fun with you all today, and I hope that you've all collected some helpful tips, some new ideas about cloud-native applications, and how your organization can better protect and recover data. Now, before you take off today, make sure you mark your calendars and come back to join us on Thursday. That's August 25th. That's this Thursday, August 25th, for a Tech Talk with Rubrik and Haiku. We'll be chatting about protecting, supporting, and enabling AWS, Azure, and GCP environments. So you know it's going to be a fascinating conversation. If you haven't been to a Tech Talk before, they're very quick. They're interesting little chats with top experts. We get into a quick topic, kind of have a conversation. It's a really interesting and engaging format to get the information you need and get on about your busy days. So make sure to join us either for that Tech Talk or a Tech Talk again soon. I certainly hope that I will see you all at a webinar, a MegaCast, an EcoCast, a Tech Talk, a DemoCast, any of the above again soon. And until then, I hope that you all have absolutely beautiful ends to your day.